Dear judges of the International Court of Justice, my name is Lenora Qereqeretabua, and I come from the island of Tribuni in the Kadabu group, a place of breathtaking beauty in Fiji. I currently serve as the Assistant Minister for Foreign Affairs, as well as the Deputy Speaker of the Fiji Parliament. But long before this role, I spent many years as the host of the Pacific Way, a regional show that documents the lived realities of the Pacific peoples. For over 2 decades, I had the honor of sharing the stories of my people. Stories of resilience, of culture, of survival. These stories ranged from climate change adaptation to health, agriculture, and the protection of our unique cultural heritage. As Pacific Islanders, we've always relied on oral history to preserve our identity. The Pacific Way was our platform to document those histories, to ensure that the world heard our voices, heard the voices of our elders, our children, and our communities. But in recent years, these stories have become more than just celebrations of our culture and traditions. They have become accounts of loss. Loss of land, loss of identity, loss of connection to the places our ancestors have called home for centuries. For us, the climate crisis has always been more than just rising seas and extreme weather. Yes, it is about those things, but it is also, importantly, about the non-economic losses. It is about losing the very essence of who we are. When the land we stand on disappears beneath the ocean, we lose more than just our home. We lose our traditions, our language, and our stories, the cultural fabric that binds us to our ancestors. In the Pacific, as it is in Fiji, land is not a commodity, it is sacred. It is part of our being, and without it, we are adrift, like canoes without a paddle. The Pacific peoples have always shown resilience in the face of adversity. We've survived cyclones, rising tides, and even colonization, but this burden is becoming unbearable. Our people cannot continue to carry the weight of the world's inaction on climate change. Cyclones like Winston and Harold, both of which brought untold devastation to my homeland, are reminders that we are in a constant state of recovery, never able to fully rebuild before the next disaster strikes. And while these natural disasters take an immense toll physically, the non-economic costs are equally heartbreaking. The traditions passed down through generations, the songs, the stories, the way we care for our land and our oceans, all of this is at risk of being lost. When communities are forced to relocate, they don't just leave their homes behind, they leave behind the graves of their ancestors, the place where their stories began. As a member of Parliament, I have witnessed firsthand the difficult conversations around the planned relocation of entire communities. In Fiji, we have implemented standard operating procedures for relocation as a last resort, after all other options have been exhausted. But even with these measures in place, the fact remains: no one wants to leave their home. Relocation, whether planned or forced, is a last-ditch attempt to survive, and it is a decision that tears at the very heart of who we are as Pacific people. Dear judges, the Pacific has been sounding the alarm for decades, yet we find ourselves constantly on the front lines of this crisis, while the rest of the world, particularly the global north, continues business as usual, extracting fossil fuels, depleting resources. Our people bear the brunt of the consequences. In 2020, when the world was battling COVID-19, Tropical Cyclone Harold hit Fiji. I traveled to my home island of Kadabu to witness the damage and assist in recovery efforts. Entire villages were destroyed, livelihoods shattered. It was a strong reminder that the climate crisis doesn't just affect those living on the islands, but our people in the diaspora too, who rallied to help with relief efforts. Today, I come before you not just as a politician or as a former host of a regional show. I come before you as a guardian of my people's stories, stories that risk being erased if action is not taken. I ask you to use your legal authority to raise the ambition of the world's biggest emitters, to ensure that future generations will not just survive, but thrive. We cannot allow our cultures, our languages, our identities to be swept away by the rising tide of inaction. Will you act to protect the vulnerable, to protect our planet, to safeguard the future for all humanity? Will you hear my call?